I can't tell you how many dates I went on that were coffee and walking around. I was like, I felt so good in like my first date skills. And then it was like, as soon as we got into a relationship, all of this past hurt and like trauma stuff just started coming up. And I was like, is it a bad thing right now? Is this a sign to go? Or is God doing something here that's like allowing for deeper healing? And like, thankfully, it was the second option. It was deeper healing.
What's up, fam? Welcome back to our channel. My name is Tim. This is my beautiful wife, Pauline, and you are tuning in to another episode of the W Podcast, where you get wisdom in the word with the
Wheelers.
Hey, so we are so excited to have you all in this week. We have some amazing guests. We've never had a couple on here who was dating, who was fresh dating. A lot of people we have either newlyweds or single. Like, ain't nobody checking for them. So we're excited to have some people who are fresh around that time, because we think there's nothing like actually having somebody who's been in it recently explaining it. Because it's one thing for us who ain't been dating for a long time to be like, this is what you should do. And yes, there's wisdom, but there's something about, I know what it feels right now.
We didn't have TikTok. We didn't have a lot of people talk about dating in 2023, how different it is. So we wanted to bring y'all a couple who is in it, who has navigated it with wisdom, with the help of the Holy Spirit. They're going to share their story and hopefully give you all some vision and some clarity as to how God works in 2023. Since some people think dating changes year to year, and maybe it does, but God is always the same.
Yeah, so without further ado, let's bring on Hailey and Jordan. How y'all doing, fam?
Hey, we're great. How are you guys?
We're doing well. We're excited to have you all on because, like I just said in the intro, we've never had someone in your position, and we think it's really going to be a great episode for people. Let's jump right in, because the people are like, all right, like, they sound cool, but who are they? So if you all could just introduce yourself, maybe a little bit about you, and then how you met, and then we can kind of just flow from there.
Okay, yeah.
So I'm Jordan. I am a photographer and videographer here in San Diego, California. And I met Hailey at a Christian dating mixer originally. And she has a bit of her side of the story of how it goes. But we didn't start dating till about 6 or so months after we met. But yeah, if you want to.
Yeah, so I'm Hailey, and I also live in San Diego. Recently moved down here in May, and my passion is content creation, and I even have worked in the Christian dating space in this last year. So it's just been so cool to be learning and working in that space, and also like actively dating at the same time. It's been a really surreal experience. So we met through an if you know dating mixer. So I know you guys have like
shout out.
Yeah, you guys have, I think she's been on your podcast.
Yeah, we had Mel on.
Yeah, so we met in February, and when I was I'm from Northern California originally, and I met Mel through Instagram, and I flew down here from Sacramento to San Diego to like help host a mixer. And so I was just like volunteering. I wasn't taking part in it, because then later on I ended up hosting a bunch up north. So that's why I was down here. And he was doing videography for the same event. And I walked in like beforehand, and they were setting up and stuff. And I saw him, and I was like, oh my gosh, that guy is so cute.
What?
Okay, Jordan.
I introduced myself, and I found out his name was Jordan. And then like 10 seconds later, I turn my back, and I'm just like helping doing stuff. And I hear him talking about how he has a date coming up. And so I was like, you know what? Like, forget that. I was like, oh, someone else. Like, I'm single out of mixer. Like this, like there's going to be somebody else. And then it wasn't until August. Okay, well, this is like another little backstory, is that after that event in February, I thought I found him on Instagram, but I found a different guy named Jordan who's also a videographer in San Diego.
Wow.
And so I start like messaging with him, like thinking it's him, but it's not. And then that guy moved to Dallas. So I'm like, I guess this guy's like not meant to be. So then like fast forward to August, and then I actually find him on Instagram. And I was like, oh, that's the guy that I saw. And so I followed him. And then it was like the next day he posted a story, but hadn't followed me back. And I was like, I do not have time for this, so I'm gonna unfollow you. Because if you're not like, if there's no mutual interest,
I have
like
a theory behind this. But
Oh, stop.
we-
You want to tell the side?
Yeah, we got to hear it later.
Yeah, you tell your side of the story.
well, so I saw that she followed me, and I checked out her Instagram, and I kind of like recognized her, but I couldn't tell where I met her from. Like knew where she was.
You couldn't remember?
They met once.
He was thinking about the girl he was going out with
I
that
wanted
day.
to. I don't know if guys out there, if you could relate, but I wanted to, because I knew that this girl was amazing. I was like, I want to play it cool and not follow her back for at least 24 hours.
Oh my gosh.
So that's
Is
what it
this a rule? Like if a cute person follows you, you have to wait 24 hours. So you don't
yeah. But I wanted to play cool, and then so she, and then I saw that she unfollowed me, and I was like, whoa, like what happened?
I like that confidence, Hailey. I don't need you.
I was like, I don't have time.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not messing around. Like, I was just not
Yeah.
really not looking for a relationship, honestly, at the time. But then he DM'd me like straight out the gate once he did follow me. And he was like, hey, do I know you? And I was like, yeah, we met at the IYK mixer in February. And he was like, oh, shoot. But he didn't remember meeting me. He didn't remember.
Yeah.
Wait, did you tell her that up front? Like, wow, I don't remember you, but
I
thanks for.
We didn't
figure
until
that?
our first date. I don't think
Yeah.
we actually talked about it. Where I was like, I actually don't remember you from the event. So my thing is, I had a date that night, and so I was just, my mindset was just work. Like I was there for work. Everybody else is there for. Hailey was there for work as well, but everybody else, all the girls, the guys were there for like trying to meet somebody. But I'm like, I'm working it. And then I'm also knowing that I'm have a date later. So like my mind was just completely turned off to like any girls.
Right.
And, like, not, like, so it was just,
Yeah.
But
I mean, I was open. I wasn't there like me anyone, but I was open.
yeah.
That's understandable. He was focused on his craft and
Mhm.
getting the capturing the video and the photos that he was supposed to get. I respect that.
Yeah.
I respect your honesty too.
Yeah, it's like I'm actually like, I think it's a good quality.
Yeah.
Actually, now that you were just like, I have a date with another girl. It was Valentine's Day, by the way, the day we met.
Yeah. And I don't know
Wow.
if people was like known of this strategy, but I didn't know this till I moved to San Diego that some people here date multiple people at a time. And I like never knew that. And like to me, my mind would never work that way. But
yeah.
It's kind of hard to focus. I don't really recommend it personally. I mean, it works for some people.
Yeah.
some people
But
do
I'm
it.
just like, how do you even like keep track of?
Yeah.
Like
Right.
a part-time job.
Right. Yeah. But now it worked out.
Yeah, it worked out.
6 months later, we met. And
Mhm. He asked me out to coffee on Instagram. And
Oh, not even in the phone, like texting. You didn't get the number first.
no.
So in my mindset, I was like, there's got to be so many guys going after her.
Aww.
So we were actually going to meet in person at a worship event in a week. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to wait till I see her in person because it's like, it's way better just to ask in person. But I was like, I don't want to wait another day. And then all of a sudden, like, she found somebody. And I was like, I wanted to make sure, like, I at least try to lock something in with her.
I like that urgency, Jordan.
Yeah.
That's a good quality.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of guys are lacking.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So we had coffee the morning of the worship event.
Mhm.
And yeah, I've just been hanging out ever since.
And you guys have just been dating ever since. I love that.
That's awesome. Wow. Okay. There's so many different things there that we could go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, so did you actually end up going to, I'm just curious, because there's so many people who they may have heard about a Christian mixer, but they never would really consider it for a myriad of different reasons.
Mhm.
But for you, obviously, you didn't necessarily go and find Jordan there because you had a ticket and you were going.
Mhm.
But at the same time, you were around people. So many people just stay in their house.
Mhm.
And
Or even people just go to events like that and they're like, they hold back. Like they don't approach people and with the confidence and the boldness that you did, Hailey. And I think a lot of the ladies, because we have a lot of ladies who listen, like that's really where they struggle. It's like, well, how do I approach a guy while still staying in my femininity and not coming across as, an aggressive woman? And so I would love for you all to talk more about that, Hailey, from your side. How did you is that who you are? Have you always been that bold? And then even Jordan, for you, were you put off by that? I know you don't really totally remember, but even just kind of, looking back, share that with us.
Yeah. So at the time when I was at that season in my life, when I first met him at the mixers, and then after that I went to like 8 of them. So I was like at these events quite often hosting. And what I loved about the IYK mixer specifically is that it was such a safe environment created that was like, you knew everyone there was single. And so everyone was available and everyone was like going there willing to meet someone. So it felt like,
Christian.
yeah,
like,
and we were Christian.
Values,
like, yeah. So it was just like a really safe environment to like put yourself out there. And, so I think that's what attracted me to that environment, was just like, I know I'm going to meet single people. I don't feel have to feel like I'm putting myself out there and being like the life of the party or something, like at a church event where everyone already knows each other and they're friends, or maybe they've like already dated. Like there's like no awkward dynamics. There's such a level playing field. And for me, I was kind of in this phase of really like challenging my quote unquote type. And I was just like, okay, I'm going to be in a season of like openly just dating a bunch of like, not just like I'm dating a bunch of people, but I'm going to go on different dates with different types of guys and just kind of see. I was kind of testing my type or what I was attracted to, because in my experience, I had a really devastating heartbreak. It was like my first relationship, my first love. It like really was a horrible experience that I've had to heal from. And so part of that was like, okay, maybe it just like wasn't the type of guy that was right for me. So I think for like all that to say, for me at that season, being in that safe environment where I knew the guys were most likely Christian and like shared like similar values and faith to me, and they were all single, and it was like a fun environment, and I wanted to meet other single people and like get the experience of going out on dates and having those conversations and just really trying to figure out like what would line up with me, and kind of just like in a surrendered state of like, I know God has something good for me, and I'm going to be willing to like put myself out there and just like learn and grow and have as much fun as I can and take the pressure off of it, knowing that he's in control of the full process. So that's kind of where I was at.
That's really great, because honestly, I feel like so many people, unfortunately, aren't that humble when it comes to dating. Like a lot of people would not have humbled themselves to say, you know what, I think I know what I like, but let me put myself out there to experience different things. And that led you to be where you are today, just being open-minded in that sense. And I think if more people took that approach of, God, I'm going to submit my ways to you because your ways are higher than my ways. I'm going to be open, and I'm allowing you to bring opportunities to me. And I just think that is a great thing that you did.
Yeah.
So I have a question, because I feel like I heard you say something, Hailey. Correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like I heard you say at some point you were like, yeah, he like, if it didn't work out, like I wasn't even really ready or going to date or in a space to date. Did you say that?
Yeah.
So did you have any hesitations once you two were like, all right, we went to coffee? Like, what happened after that? Was there hesitation?
I was definitely like, I was way more hesitant because of where I was at, because at that point, so this was like after I had done probably 9 to 10 months of just like saying yes to first dates and being on dating apps and meeting people through Instagram, and had really put myself out there. And I was honestly at the place where I was like exhausted. But then I had recently moved down here, and I was like, well, I haven't tried Hinge in San Diego. Like there's got to be like tall, Christian, attractive guys on Hinge. But then I was like, wait, I've never fully surrendered. Like I've never asked God, like, do you like, will you bless this online dating? Like, is this something you want me to do? And so when I prayed about it, I strongly felt in my spirit that God was like, no, online dating, like, no, you're going to meet your person in person. And that had a lot to do with why I even went out with Jordan, because he just contacted me on Instagram. But had I not seen him in person and had we not had mutual friends, I would have said no to going on the first date with him because of where I was at and like what I had heard from the Lord. So after that first date, I was kind of just in a spot where I was like, I'll go on this date. I feel like, it's like, I'm not like stepping outside of what I heard God say with online dating, because I do know him. And then it was after that first date, I was like, I don't know. I wasn't fully sure. if I was going to marry him, but I was sure that he was a really great guy, and our values and our passions and what God was doing in our life seemed to line up in a really unique and cool way that I hadn't experienced before. So I was willing to go on a second date with him. And he actually asked me out to dinner. But for me, I was like, I am not ready to sit down at dinner with you. Like, I'm not ready to
Really?
at the dinner table, because I was like, I've my experience when I've had dinner dates with guys and it's like the second or third date, I tend to just like overshare and share my life story. And then I'm like, oh, like if they end up like cutting things off or like rejecting me, I'm like, oh, that kind of like I shared too much too soon. And so it like hurts a little bit more. So I told him that I was like, I'll go on another date with you. Can we keep it light and fun?
And this was after she took, I think, at least 24 hours to respond to me. I'm telling all my friends, I'm like, she doesn't like me. She doesn't like me. So I was like, but it turned out she was just processing it and stuff.
Yeah,
so
but you were really great with it. And I think that was like the first thing where I was like, okay, he's respecting like this boundary that I have for myself. And so he planned a fun date for us, and we went to the aquarium on our second date, and it was really sweet.
That's awesome. Jordan, I want to get your perspective, but I just want to slow down really quick because I don't want people to, Hailey, you just said so much. I don't want people to miss it. Like there's so many nuggets that I think people can really utilize this year to help them, whether they're trying to get a date, whether they're in a relationship already. First thing you said that stuck out to me was that before you even decided to get on a dating app, you asked, hey, God, is that something I should do? And I love that because we always say Christian dating starts before you start dating. Like Christian dating is, God, I'm submitting every area of my life to you, which includes my dating life. Lord, what do you want it to look like for me? Because just because dating apps work for somebody else doesn't mean it's going to work for you. So I love that. I wanted people to catch that. And then the other thing you did was you knew yourself. You knew, and again, it happened through experience. It wasn't like you were perfect, but still, you got to a place in your life where you knew that if I say yes to a dinner date, I may fumble it. I may mess it up. And it was because of your self-awareness that you were able to make the right move. How were you able to have that self-awareness? Because I feel like so many people, unfortunately, they don't have that when it comes to dating. They don't know themselves that well. How did you learn yourself in that way?
I think, well, for me, I had like a pretty fresh experience like a couple months before that where I did get to a dinner date on the first or second date. And then it was like I shared a lot, and it was just like, and then I was like rejected like right after that. So for me, it was like a real personal experience of like, I didn't like the way that felt, and it didn't feel like I was guarding and protecting my heart in the way that I knew that I should be. And it was kind of interesting because it's not that I thought that Jordan was going to break up with me if I shared everything with him, or that I was like nervous for that. It was just I had this like stronger conviction to like guard and protect my heart and my story and the things that I've been through, and really like share that with somebody through time. And I've also had in this last year just such strong mentorship that's allowed me to be able to like process these things, and we were talking about like those resources and stuff through Heart of Dating, and just like being able to like get to know myself and build that self-awareness, which I think is just, it really is just being aware through time of the experiences and slowing down with them, being like, okay, how did this date make me feel? How did this like, why, and like taking that to the Lord the whole time and like processing it with him. Because there's so much self-awareness and so much self-love and all this stuff, like even leaking into the church. But when you're like aware of yourself and submitting it to God constantly, like he's going to guide and direct and be like, okay, this is good for you, this is not good for you. And it's like so much more of a step-by-step, conversation by conversation than a like, dating blueprint that I think sometimes we search for.
Yeah, no, I love it.
So good.
I agree. Allowing God to guide your personal process. Right. That is the key. So, Jordan, let's get back to you because this is really interesting. So you are bold. You ask her out for a coffee date, and then you are even bold enough to ask for another date for dinner.
Yeah.
He's ready. Like, all right, I spent a couple dollars on you coffee. That's not a big deal. I want to buy you food. I want to buy you a meal and take you to a restaurant.
Yeah.
How did it feel when you were in that waiting time? Because I'm asking you this question because unfortunately, I feel like people don't think about how the guys feel sometimes, and they just think it's so easy to just come up and ask a woman out. It's like you had to face the fear that I could be rejected. Like that was a possibility. So what were you thinking at this time? How were you handling that? and then just kind of walk us from there.
Yeah. So first off, I thought she was way out of my league. So that was the thing, was so scary because I asked her out to the coffee date because I wanted to make sure lock it in. Right. And then the coffee date went so well. I think that we just shared so much about our hearts and values and kind of just vision for our lives a little bit, not too much in depth about our past or a dinner date would be, I guess. And then when I asked her, I think when we were leaving our first date is when I was like, hey, would you be down to do another date? A date? I think I was like, did I earn a date number 2?
Yeah.
And then you were like, yeah, I think so. And so I was like, okay, so we're good then. And then I think later afterwards, maybe waited a couple hours and I texted her and was like, hey, do you want to go out to dinner? When you want to go? And then she was like, and then that was the wait.
But I saw you that day because that was the day of the event. So you had did you text me before the event?
Yeah. So I texted her and then the event was that night. And so she had never texted me back. And then I saw her at the event and then I went and I think I think you were ignoring me.
No, I was not ignoring. Okay, no. I said hi and bye to you. But when I saw you at the event, everything in me was because I don't talk to him. Don't talk to him.
You knew you left him on red. You're like, he's
on red.
So so I haven't gotten a text back yet. And so I was like, what is happening?
So she's alive. That's good. I'm glad you're not dead.
He hates me. And so I was like, oh man. But no, and just when I got the text back and then just kind of the communication of just okay, well, I understand and so to me, I know she was working for Heart of Dating. So that was another added pressure of she works for a dating company.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, she knows all this dating information and she's professional. So she goes to her manual at the end of the day and making sure checking off all the T's and making sure we're doing it right. And I was like, so that's an intimidating factor as well.
It is for sure.
But yeah, no, the waiting period was hard, but yeah. And then just communication, then being respectful of okay, the dinner date is not something that she's ready for yet. And so it's just taking it slower and just making sure that we're getting to know each other at a good pace, And then I think to me, I was super nervous. I don't know if you guys wanted to back up, but at date number 3, I was super nervous before date number 3 because to me, I'm a 3 date is if you don't know a good idea by 3 dates, then it's done to me. And so before date number 3, I was like, we haven't had that connection yet. And so I was like, it's either this date goes well and we have that connection or it's, I don't know. So I was just I put a lot of pressure on date number 3 and I think date number 3 went so well and I don't know your thoughts on that. But
yeah, date number 3 was, I don't know if you guys want to touch on anything else, but date number 3 was perfect. I was actually at my Bible study at women's group the night before and I had the date the next day and I was talking about it with the girls and I was like, I'm just not feeling super excited or giddy about this date. It just feels something it was just a different feeling than I've ever experienced I've had a tendency before to just get really giddy about guys that I probably shouldn't have. And with him, I didn't really feel that over wanting to jump in and commit to something. And they actually asked me, they were like, why are you not excited? And they picked my brain about it so much. And we talked through it. And then they were like, well, what's your ideal date? And I was like, ideal date would be charcuterie board on the beach. That's my dream. And I show up to date number 3 and he had just sent me a location and it was kind of the side of this cliff. And he gets out of his car and I was like, this man has nothing planned. I was like, I'm starving. What are we going to do? And then he's like, well, do you want to walk over here? And we had to cross over this fence. I think we trespassed and we climbed down.
I love it.
And I was like, what am I doing? And we turned the corner and he had set up this whole charcuterie picnic on the beach.
Come on, Holy Spirit.
And I was like, oh my gosh, this is
Jordan. How did you get that idea? Did you have one of the girls from the Bible study text you?
No. I didn't know anybody in her Bible study. So and she didn't tell me that till just
after,
recent.
Yeah.
Well,
wow, look at God.
Yeah.
And so it was just really cool. Yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah, and that date was the environment, I think in my perspective, was like the environment that he kind of set up of like, almost like he like prepared a place for us. And it was just like really cool to be able to sit, and like he came like wanting to learn specific things about me and opened up a lot of conversation and led in a vulnerable way that was like, okay, we can actually like build something. There's something here that we can build. And I felt really safe. I kind of came into that date having like a few things that I did want to bring up, and I wasn't sure how I was going to bring them up. But everything just like kind of naturally came up, and we like really connected. And that was a date where we were there for a long time, just like sitting on the beach talking. It was like till it was way past dark. So it was like a really special date.
Yeah, no, first of all, thank you for sharing that story. That was awesome to hear. I'm curious for you, Hailey, were you in that same mindset? I know you said that you were like, I'm not really excited about this date, but were you thinking like, if this doesn't go well, I'm calling it? Like, were you in that same mindset?
I think I was also like, I was just not excited. And I think in my mind, I was like, not that I had pressure on it, but I just kind of knew like, if I'm still not feeling it after this date, like I might give it one more, but then I'm going to have to be thinking about like kind of like cutting things off basically, which I like didn't want to do. It's just like not fun to like tell someone you're not interested in them. So I think I was just like, I just really, I can't even describe it. Like, I just kind of felt like, just like not super excited, not super nervous. Like it just kind of was, I don't even know. I'm like kind of speechless about it.
And I think both like the first two dates were great. Like they like,
weren't bad.
We're like, I thought she was great. She thought I was great. And it was just like, to me, it was like the third date was like, okay, to me, it's like, okay, it's date number 3. You know, like here we are, like we're well into this now to me at this point. And then it's like, what is the missing ingredient? Like, cause I felt like there was just something missing for like a connection. And it was really the vulnerability.
Yeah.
And that's like date number 3 is when we really started getting vulnerable with each other. And that's where I felt like, okay, wow, now like there was that spark, like the vulnerability, and kind of just like went on that path for sure.
Yeah.
It's so interesting because that's what Hailey, it sounds like what you were kind of waiting for, like why you didn't want the dinner date as the second date, and you needed those baby steps or to take it one step at a time. And Jordan, of course, was patient and understanding in that. And I mean, I don't know if you consider that a dinner date, but it was perfect for you. It wasn't, you didn't need a sit down dinner to connect with him. It was in a space where you felt safe, and it's something that you liked. It was a food and environment that you know that was specific to you. It's just so cool to hear how God intervened. And I think that's my favorite part so far that you all have shared, is just like the God intervention of like, oh, it wasn't my idea. Like everything wasn't so engineered. It was like, okay, this worked out, that worked out. And you know, we have parts of our story that are like that too. That it's like, wow, like only God could have, you know, made this happen. And I think that one of the things that I'm hoping people will hear that you all have shared so far is like, you know, things happen step by step. Like you're not going to fall in love the first date, the second date, and the third date. And I know that, you know, you all have been together for a few months now, and the timeline is so weird. Like we always say, like, okay, if you're 18, like, yeah, you might need to date for 6-7 years because you're 18. Like you don't have, you know, you're figuring your life out. But the older you get, a lot of times you can date faster because you know yourself better. You've just had experience, you know what you like and what you need. But I think just showing, you know, that even if you aren't together for it doesn't take a long time for God to orchestrate things, but also you have to give him space. And I think there are a lot of ladies who are like, if I'm not, you know, in love with him before the first date, then I don't want to go on the date. And it's like, well, let's try to like, just have a conversation first. You know, did you struggle with that at all, of like, you know, feeling, because even you talked about, you know, not being excited for the third date, but how did you stay committed? Like what made you not want to cancel it, or like talk to us about that?
I think it was just on our first date, I saw so clearly what God was doing in his life, and it lined up so well with like things that I had been praying for, that I had been asking the Lord for, and that I just really felt strongly that I wanted in a relationship. Those things were there on the first date, and I knew like it wasn't this thing of like on the first date where I was like, oh, I have all these feelings for you and I want to like just be with you and I want this to work out. But it was more of a thing of like, God's doing something here and I want to be here for it. And I want to like, I don't want to like, I'm not going to cut it off until I clearly like know from God that I should like cut this off. And so as I was like praying about things and praying with my small group leading up to that, I never didn't have the spark yet, but I didn't have a clear like, no, you need to like cut this person off. And so I think I'm just so glad that I just kind of stayed, and it was like a waiting period, almost like I kind of waited through it, not out of anything other than just like wanting to be obedient and attentive to what the Lord was doing. And then on that third date, it was really him that opened up with a lot of the vulnerability, because I was in a place where I was like, I don't want to share, like I'm not in a place to share my heart with someone unless I know for sure that they're like able to care for it in the way that I need like my heart to be cared for. And he was able to do exactly that. And it did happen through him opening up and sharing things that he'd been through. And it was just kind of this moment of like, oh wow, this is a safe space like for my heart. And then after that was kind of like that night was where I would say there was like a little bit more of a spark to our relationship. And it was really like beautiful thing, pace and a way that it happened.
Yeah, no, I love that. And it's so interesting. Jordan, I don't think you were saying this is a hard and fast rule, but I think it's something that people listening may want to consider. You said like the 3-date rule. And I think the 3-date is a good timeline. Obviously, it could be a little more, it could be whatever, but I think the 3-date is so good. Here's why. One, when you have 3 dates, like Pauline kind of mentioned, you're forcing yourself to not just give up after the first date and just be like, he didn't make me laugh enough, like I'm out. And it's like, okay, let's just give space to see if something happens. But then on the flip side, when you have 3 dates, you're not going too long where you're opening up your heart to someone that really has no interest in you. And I just think that's a good rule that somebody may want to consider going forward. You know, not just be going on several different dates with somebody and there's no true plan about what you want to happen.
Yeah, Jordan, talk to us about that rule. Like, have you always used it? Where did it come from?
Yeah, so I haven't always used it. I just think to me it's happened a couple times, but it's like there's been a few people that I've gotten to 3 dates and then I just feel like we should not continue on. Like it just doesn't make sense. Like, but I think the 3-date rule is a good rule to use because it's like Hailey was saying, like some people do think like they're just going to be a spark on date 1. And it's like, oh my gosh, like just fall in love. But it's like, there's some stories where it's like date 1, it's like, yeah, they're great, but it's like, I don't know, I need to see more. Like, and so I think that's our story is just like date 1 was great. Like we absolutely enjoyed the date, both of us. And like, we both shared values and it's like, okay, we align, but it's like, that there is going to be where we need to take some more time. So it's like date 2 and then got a little bit more in depth, and then date 3, the vulnerability. And then just now it's like, okay, we're actually have a good foundation now. And I think 3 dates is good for that, to like, at least just like you guys said, like create some space and some time to like really just test it out and really see like, can we really build off of this? And I think like in our case, in our story, like date number 3 was like, okay, yeah, we can really, I think it just clicked for both of us. Like we really can build off of this. And like, this is a good foundation.
Yeah, that's good.
I love that because it just sounds so intentional. And I hope that the guys listening, that's helpful for you all, because I know some guys, they feel like, oh, there's a girl I want to take out, or I really want to go about dating as a Christian, but I don't know how to do it in a practical way. And because I know a lot of guys are trigger shy, not because they're not confident in themselves and like, you know, the value that they have as a man, but a lot of times they're like, well, if I go out with this girl, what if she falls in love with me? And like, I'm not really ready to, you know, I don't want to break a girl's heart. You know, I don't want to ask a girl out and she thinks that like, this is going to turn into marriage. Well, I really just want to get to know her in a one-on-one situation without the distractions of, you know, friends or whoever else is around. So hopefully that is helpful for any guys listening is like kind of give yourself a game plan, and it's like, okay, I'm committing, but I'm not over committing, you know, to kind of go about this and get to know this girl better. Now, I do have a question for you all about how you, I don't know if like manage is the right word, but approach your relationship as a dating couple. So some people have like weekly date night. Some people talk on the phone for at least 15 minutes every day. What are some milestones that have helped you all get to know each other as a dating couple?
I think, well, we have implemented weekly date nights, which are like, even if we do see each other throughout the week, we always were like, he was taking me out and planning a date like once a week, that like very much the beginning of our dating time. And I think one thing that really stood out to me about Jordan is that he was so intentional in communicating with me and getting to know me. And he would just like, he wanted to FaceTime me throughout the week if we didn't see each other. And it wasn't like he just wanted to see me and to like talk. I don't know. I just like, for me, that was like a really intentional thing on his part of like, he wanted to see me and get to know me a little bit better, even if we couldn't see each other in person that week for whatever reason. So I think those are a couple of things that helped. Is there anything else that I missed?
Yeah, well, I don't know if this maybe answers the question, but it's like we definitely read the Bible together every morning, whether it's like in person or over the phone, like making sure like that's like our number one thing, because like we just need Jesus at the center, because that's like the biggest thing for our relationship is like making sure. And I just, maybe we're talking about this, but just like waking up, making sure like I'm serving her, you know, like in the relationship. Like to me, like that's something that clicked early on in our relationship is like, and what's helped me is the fact that like to dying to myself in this relationship. Because I think there's a lot of people that are like, what am I getting out of this relationship?
Yeah.
Like, what do I get? And so like, to me, it was like dying to myself and just knowing like when I get with Hailey, like I'm here to serve her and like serve this relationship and just have that mindset. But.
Yeah. And I think that was your posture the whole time. And I will say, because I know like sometimes in Christian dating, it can be awkward. And it's like, we didn't really start like reading the Bible together every day. It was like, it wasn't like right off the bat, we're Christians and we're dating, so this is what we have to do. Right. It was kind of like we had built a like fun connection. We had built like more of an emotional connection. And then that when it was time to like kind of start like pursuing God a little bit more together and like making that intentional piece is, that's when I felt like things really started moving in a different way after that. And that really for me was like, I remember the first day we would like voice memo it. So we'd read like 2 chapters and we'd like voice memo throughout the day. And like within that first week, just like the more I got to hear his heart and like what he was taking from the Bible, it was like, it was like attractive to me. I was like, like, this man can preach. Like, I was like, he's in the word. Like that was just but again, it's one of those things with like timing where it happened when it needed to happen. And it wasn't a force like, oh, because we're Christian, this is what dating has to look like. And
Yeah, I'm so glad that you said that, because, you know, I definitely agree with you, Hailey, how sometimes in like Christian spaces, when you're talking about the spiritual connection, it can be like boundaries are necessary, but it's something that we just haven't really done well of like painting pictures for people. So I'm so grateful that you all just shared how it has worked for you. Because some couples are like, some people are like, don't pray together no matter what. Like it's too intimate. You're going to start thinking, you know, whatever, or relying on your partner to like carry your prayer life or your spiritual life for you. And of course, like that's not good. But also the same token, you need to know this person can pray before you marry them. You need to know this person can read the word and that God can speak to them through his word, through prayer. Like, you know, we don't need to be completely ignorant of it. So I love that, and that you guys gave what works for you, because it's important. I think, you know, we and then, you know, of course in the church we work so hard to tell people like how to stay away from each other or how to have boundaries physically, which that's important too, and even sometimes emotionally. But I think that the spiritual component of that is often neglected, and then people get married and they're like, oh, you don't really love Jesus the way I thought you did. Like you just go to church. You don't actually, you know, like love God and talk to him and trust him and hear from him. Tim says all the time that you should when you're dating, it's always good to have an account of where you've seen somebody hear from God and obey. Because a lot of times people say, oh, God told me to do this. And it's like, okay, so like, what happened? Like, have you done that? And then like to be able just to see, that sacrifice. And Jordan, I love what you said so much about like your heart to serve Hailey and be a servant in your relationship. And I think that just shows your heart to be a leader, and like that's what God, the type of leadership God calls his sons to have, is to like, especially as a husband, it's like, yeah, my family is it, and like if no one's gonna eat, it's not gonna be me, or if no one's gonna eat, it'll be me, versus like, okay, well, I'm in charge and what I say goes. It's like, that's not the heart at all.
Yeah. I agree, and Jordan, I'm with you on that heart for sure. But for our people listening, because maybe some of the fellas got scared when you say that. And just being honest, like you don't know who's listening.
Proud of myself.
Yeah.
I mean,
so I got two questions. The first one is, what does that look like practically in dating? Because we talked about it. Like, yes, there should be some boundaries, like, but also you should doubt yourself a little bit. Like, what does that look like practically for you? And then two, what would you say to a guy who is scared and they're like I'm scared to give that much to somebody because what if they don't give it back? Just kind of your thoughts on those two things.
Yeah. So practically what it looked like, I can just speak from like our relationship, is that like Hailey, once we started to become vulnerable, Hailey was just working through a lot of hurt and just working through a lot of healing from past relationships and just things in her childhood. And so there early on, I will be honest, like there was some frustration on both ends, really. Like my end was like we would come to a conversation or something, and I just wasn't getting maybe like just kind of like the communication that I would maybe wanted, or like someone maybe like hurt, like emotionally, just kind of like just seeing emotionally like what I'm going through, or maybe just like just relating to my emotions. But it was just like she was going through healing, and so it was like, okay, I need to show up for her healing and for like what she's going through, and like the focus isn't on me right now. Like it's I need to make sure like Hailey is good, and like that really. And then another thing was like, I'm a guy, and a lot of guys want to like fix things, and like they're fixers. And so it was like, okay, well, all right, if there's something wrong, like, okay, let's fix it. Like, let me talk to me about it and like, let me fix it. And then it was like in that moment, she just really needed me to be there and to create a safe space for her. And the safe space was just like, okay, my focus is fully on you. I'm here. Like, and like, we don't need to talk. I can just be here, and you can cry on my shoulder, and I can just hold you, and that's it. And so it's like so every day it was making sure like my relationship with God was right, and making sure like what I needed to get from my spirit and my emotions, I got that with God. And that way, when I came and showed up to physically in person with Hailey, that my focus wasn't on like stuff that I may be going through. It was on her, because of the healing that she needed to go through and stuff that she was working through, and just building the relationship together. And it can be like scary. Like it can be scary to be like, well, I'm dying to myself and stuff like that, because it's like, well, I want to get stuff out of this relationship too. Like I should be, but it's like naturally it will come. But like the first things first is that as a man, like biblically and just naturally, like I'm supposed to just come and serve her and just be here for her through what she needs to go through, and just the healing that she goes through, and just like showing up for her as a man, and just being respecting her and honoring her and putting her first. And just, I think it can be scary, but I think it's just such a reward to just kind of see how our relationship has grown because of that. I think like I just seen our relationship grow because of that, just like putting you first, and like just really creating a safe space, because it's just what she needed, really.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. I love that, because and what really sounds like what you just described, Jordan, is you stopped trying to change her,
Mm.
and you started to love her. And I think so many of us, just Christians, romantic, platonic, all relationships with our family, like that's something that I know I struggle with a lot. It's like, it's not, and something the Lord always reminds me of, like, it's not your job to try to change people, or, oh, I wish they were more like this, or I wish they were more like that. And it sounds like that's what a journey the Lord has kind of taken you on, is like, okay, what does she need from me right now? That's what I'm going to give her, instead of like, why don't you just get over this? Why are you so crying over that? Like, that happened so many years ago. Like, you're so mature. And it's like, okay, we're all broken, you know, people. And it is very honestly brave, Hailey, of you to be vulnerable with anybody who chooses to be vulnerable. It's a brave move. And to honor that, to honor somebody's vulnerability. I know that was the word you all used, that was like a breakthrough point in your relationship, was that, you know, on that third date, having that vulnerability and then proving yourself. And like, I just love that, you know, you took it further, like who you showed to her who you were on the third date, saying like, hey, I set all this up, I want us to have a very intentional conversation, you were vulnerable. No, it wasn't like, I just did that just to see what you would say, or like because I want something from you, but it was because this is who I really am, or who I'm striving to be, who I'm working on to becoming, and this relationship is an opportunity for me to grow, you know, in that way. Because obviously there's so many guys who are like, yeah, I'm going to make her trust me, and then I'm going to take something from her. I want something from her. And I'm not even talking about sexually. It can be like, oh, because I want your attention. I want you to want to be there for me, and to kind of be, you know, like the mom I never had, or like the emotional best friend, or whatever the case is. But you said, no, I gave that to you on the third date because I want to do more of that. I want to be here for you and serve you. I just love that so much. And it's such honestly a great story of what healthy emotional dating can be like. And I think that that's not talked enough about in the Christian space. Like, so many of us are like, oh, you love God, I love God, you love God, like this should work out, right? And people are fighting like cats and dogs, and you know, we don't go through that emotional piece of it. So I just thank y'all so much for sharing that.
Of course. And I do think like one thing that actually did bring us together in those times, and like through Jordan kind of being on that journey while I was on my own kind of healing journey, because when we met, I had dating down. I was like first date, second date, even third date. Like I was like autopilot. Like, this is what I say, this is my story. So I'm looking for, like, I can't tell you how many dates I went on that were coffee and walking around. I was like, I felt so good in like my first date skills. And then it was like, as soon as we got into a relationship, all of this past hurt and like trauma stuff just started coming up. And I was like, is this because am I triggered? Is it a bad thing right now? Is this a sign to go? Or is God doing something here that's like allowing for deeper healing? And like, thankfully it was the second option. It was deeper healing. And so with that, there was a lot of conflict in our relationship, like fairly early on. Like there was like pretty intense conflict early on. And it was working through that I think kind of expedited the way our relationship has grown, because I began to trust him in conflict over time of like, okay, I trust that this is someone that we can work, like if we can work through this stuff right now, I know like the day-to-day life things that come up in conflict, we can do conflict together, and we can learn how to be like on the same team, and not like we're constantly working on not attacking each other. And even if it is my emotions or my past or my story, it's like, how are we going to attack this together, instead of like us feeling like one of us are the problem when that's not really the case. And so I think sometimes Christians also need to hear that it's okay to have conflict. Like having conflict or like getting into a disagreement or something like that doesn't mean it's an unhealthy relationship. And it's actually can be a really great test of, is this somebody that I can like continue to do conflict with the rest of my life? Because healthy relationships aren't void of conflict. Which can kind of like in our Christian world, it's like, oh, everything's perfect. We have the perfect Christian relationship. Like it's all, you know, like just perfect really. Or it's like all holy and there's no, like we've done everything the right way. So this is great. And it guarantees that we're going to have like blessing in the future. And it's just not that way. And so it's actually, I've experienced like, it's so beautiful that it is messy, and it's so beautiful that it doesn't have to be a perfect process. And, there's just so much beauty in like just seeing God move through those things.
Yeah, 1,000% agree. Honestly, we believe it's a red flag if you ain't never had conflict.
Yeah.
That's a red flag to us because that usually means somebody isn't really being vulnerable. Somebody really isn't being honest because no two people are going to agree 100% on everything. So there has to be some type of conflict. And like you said, it doesn't have to be negative. And there's a way to have healthy conflict. Absolutely. So that's amazing. I agree with that.
Yeah,
so
sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, and to me, it's like important for us to know how to do conflict together. Like before we get any more serious in our relationship, it was like important that we knew how to confront it. And that's like something that switched in us is like, we don't fight sideways, we fight forward. Like we know like we're on the same page and like we know that we have the same goal and mission. It's like now we just fight forward and know like we tackle things together. And it's like, so something's wrong, like we face it together. So, yeah.
No, thank you for sharing that. That's great.
It takes a lot of security to have that mindset. But I think that's, if anyone's listening and they're like, oh, that sounds nice, like that's not my experience with conflict. And that's obviously a very real thing.
Yeah.
Not an unusual thing, especially if you grew up in a home with a lot of toxic conflict and you think, like, slamming doors and cussing out each other is normal, and that's what great folks do, and like that's a lot of people's experience, and like it is normal in a worldly way, but it's not the way that God wants us to handle conflict. Conflict is meant for us to grow deeper with one another and get to know each other better. So if you are somebody who tends to run from conflict, or you end up hurting others after conflict and things get worse, that's definitely something that you want to bring to the Lord. And you can even practically start that in your friendships, like conflict and friends. So many of us run from our friendships, our conflict in our friendships, and it can be a great practice, before you get in a relationship if you're not in one already. But I love that you all we're ready for it. It's kind of like you're like, yeah, let's do this. Like I want to have this conversation. Like I want to grow. It sounds like you all really have a growth mindset in your relationship, so it just changes the way you approach things. When you want to grow together and you want to see all that God can do, versus like looking at a relationship as like some type of like social status, or like, oh, I'm loved because I'm chosen by this person. You're like, no, this is something that I'm supposed to offer to God, and something that I'm supposed to nourish for the future, something that has purpose, something that is supposed to be bigger than myself. And you all just have such a heart of humility towards one another, it sounds like, and just such a confidence that you have from the Lord. Jordan, you said it earlier of like, hey, my relationship with God needs to be good before I'm like going to Hailey with, asking her how she's doing, what I can do for her. Like, you wouldn't be able to do that probably if you didn't have a strong relationship with God. So I love that. And I think it's just a great example of what godly dating can be.
Yeah, absolutely. So are there any last or final thoughts that you have that you may want to share with people, just as we're wrapping up this episode? If y'all didn't get nothing from this, I don't know what you listened to, because this was good. It was. Any final thoughts or takeaways you want to give people?
I think just give it to God. Like, that's so like not like, that probably doesn't even sound like practical advice, but I think in your singleness and in dating, the more you just view everything as like a learning experience, and learn to not judge it as good or bad, because it's really easy to be like, oh, that was a bad date, like didn't get anything from that. But when you approach each date, even friendships or opportunities as a single or dating person, you can learn and grow so much that when the right person does come along, it starts to become easier and easier to discern like who is right for you in the context of dating and relationships. So I think the practical is just to be open, to put yourself out there, maybe get yourself to some IYK dating mixers if they're in your area, and then just constantly like be like approaching it with a posture of growth and curiosity, and learning what you can learn about yourself, and taking care of yourself and your relationship with God first is key for healthy dating.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Hey, that is great. Thank y'all so much for your time. Thank you for opening up and being vulnerable.
Yeah.
Because honestly, you all are still in it. You haven't fully crossed over to marriage yet, and sometimes it's hard to be vulnerable with other people when you're still walking through it. So honestly, so much respect to you all, and we're just grateful because so many people are going to truly be blessed by this. And I know because of that, they're going to be like, where can I find these people? I want to stay connected. So where can they find you? How can they stay connected with you if they are interested?
Yeah, so we hang out on Instagram mostly.
Yeah.
So I'm at the Hailey Kenyon, and you're
at the Jordaners.
Yeah, at the Jordaners, and then we're gonna
always match like that.
No, he changed it. He copied.
I copied her because she's great, and I thought it was great, so I was like, I'm gonna copy it. So
you inspired him.
Yeah, and then we literally just started a joint TikTok account that we're going to be posting on this year. So
what type of content's going to be on the joint TikTok?
We think it'll be kind of funny stuff. So one thing we like to do in our relationship is like we're really both competitive, and so we'll put like bets on things, and then we'll have to like I've had to jump in the snow like in a tank top, like not wearing a jacket, and like we're constantly like
most bets she's lost.
Yeah,
so.
I've lost lots.
Dang, Hailey, we gotta help you out. We gotta get you
fun, like,
a lot of the content will be her.
Be me. But just like funny like couples humor, I guess. And we're having fun with that. So it's Jordan and Hailey 1 on TikTok.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank y'all for sharing that. Definitely go follow them. There's so much more good stuff you're going to get from them. And we're so grateful for your time. This has been another episode of the W Podcast. Again, if you didn't get something from that, you got to rewind and listen again because so many nuggets were dropped. One of the things I love that you said, babe, was don't try to change people. Just choose to love them. And if you do that, whether it's dating, whether it's friendship, whether it's your family, your relationships in 2023 are going to be so much better.
Yeah.
We'll see you next week on W Podcast.
Bye.
Thanks for watching this video.
To get more Christian relationship advice, subscribe to our channel.
And make sure you check out our other videos as well.